In today's video, we're going to be taking this spoilerless trunk and adding an OEM factory 1990-1991 model spoiler, which I picked up from a buddy who was parting out a Lude and happened to have this OEM spoiler. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 1990 to 91 spoilers have the legs right beside the third brake light, and I believe the 88, 89s just have one single leg in the center. I could be totally wrong on that, but here's what we're looking at. It does have some imperfections. The paint is pretty well, or at least the clear coat is pretty well cracked. So the plan is to sand this thing all the way down and hit it with some body filler. I gotta first disassemble it and take the third brake light out, sand it, fill it, prime it, paint it, clear coat it. To get the third brake light out, I'm assuming we pull out these little tabs here, and then I'm guessing there's gonna be like some Phillips head screws underneath. So we'll try and get these out without damaging anything. And then I also want to replace these foam pads that are all along the spoiler. Just put some new foam on there so it hopefully seals up a bit nicer. But first off, I'm going to get this third brake light out. So trying to be very careful with these. I'm just going to take a plastic trim tool and pry this up. There we go. Just a couple of plastic tabs, so definitely be very careful. And then we've got, looks like a Phillips head screw, so that should be what holds in the third brake light. Okay, all three caps are off, so just a Phillips head, one in each position, or one in each of the three holes. Keep our hardware nice and safe. Oh boy, that one's tight. Okay. We try and flip this around so I got a better way to hit it with the screwdriver. Let's try this. Oh boy, that's tight. Muscled that one out a little bit. The end of it was a bit rusty, so we'll have to clean up those screws before we reinstall, but now our brake light should come out. I'm gonna have a heck of a time feeding this wire back through, but I guess it has to be done. I'm trying to think of, before I pull this out, what the best way to do this might be, so that way I guess I'll just have to figure it out. It has to come out. So yeah, there we go. Third brake light is out. With the same tool I used to pop the clips out, I used to kind of scrape off all the old foam, at least most of it. I'm gonna have to figure out maybe just sandpaper to get the rest of it out of there. That way, when I go to put the new foam on, I have a nice clean surface to stick it onto. But I think next up is to just clean this thing entirely and see what we're working with as far as condition. And then we can get to sanding, get all this cracked clear coat off of here, and at least that'll be the next step. So clean it, see what we have to work with, and then probably start sanding. Voila, mostly clean enough to start sanding. And I want to, before we get into that, show you guys an awesome box that I have sitting aside here. This is from Automotive Touchup, automotivetouchup.com. And what they do is provide paint matched paint for your car or car accessories. So they were kind enough to send me out this box with a ton of paint, including other accessories. So we've got a paint prep surface wipe. So this would be good to get all of the grease and oils off before we actually paint. They've sent out a multi-pack of different types of grit sandpaper. So we can, looks like 40, 80, 180, 320, 400, 600, 1000, 1200, 1500, and 2000 grit. That's crazy that this is all in here. So super cool that we have that. And then I think I'm stoked on this. They sent out their rubber sanding block. So this is great if you're working on bigger car surfaces, because then you can make sure you're sanding flat and not using your palm, which is curved, obviously, and getting deeper into some areas. So super sweet to have this. Might or may not use it on the spoiler, especially up top here. I'll probably use it. And then in the box we have, start with the 4 cans of sandable primer. We've got 4 cans of base coat, and I have Honda NH-538 is my paint code. So right there, and it should be paint matched. And then to top it all off, we have 4 cans of Automotive Touch-Up Gloss Clear Coat. So should be plenty. I was telling them that I wanted to paint not only this rear spoiler, but I also have the rear windshield visors that I want to paint. And I think that's going to be more than enough paint to get the job done. I imagine this may take possibly just 1 can of each, primer, base coat, clear. It may take 2 cans of each, and then same thing possibly with the rear windshield visor. But I wanted to try this first and get this all situated on the car. So basically we're at the point now where we're going to start sanding. I don't know if I'm going to jump into their really nice sandpaper yet, because I already have some. I'm going to maybe use this as like the finishing sandpaper. But for starters, I'm just going to probably run over this with some like 120 grit, I think maybe I have 120, 160, somewhere around there, and just get some of these blemishes, kind of everything sanded down to one flat surface. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is some 150 grit with a sanding, like a soft sanding sponge. And I like to use that just so that way I'm not, I can kind of push into the different surfaces without having to use my hand. I just find it works a little bit better. And then like anything else on a car, I'm going to kind of do a crisscross pattern to try and keep everything nice and even and level. So here we go. And the trunk spoiler is all sanded down, but what you're looking at here is one of the rarest parts, I think, for the 3rd gen Honda Prelude, and that's because Honda never made them. This is a custom made out of fiberglass mold, a rear windshield spoiler. So it will sit off the back of the rear windshield. Let me show you what that, well, it's gonna be hard to show you without taping it up, but basically I'll bring it over. It will sit up top the upper portion of the rear windshield, and it makes a cool little unique sporty addition to the 3rd gen Honda Prelude. And I had a buddy out in Spain actually send me out some of these, and kind of like a trial run. And I have, I think, 3 more for sale. So if you guys want one, hit me up in the comments or send me a message on Instagram, all that good stuff. But I'm going to go ahead. I figured why paint twice when I could paint once. So I'm going to do the same process on this thing while I have it ready to go. And even though it's white, it's just like some of them came in green, some of them came in white. It's just a fiberglass sealer. So we're going to sand it, putty fill it, any little spots and imperfections, and then paint it. It is the next day now, and last night I basically took some of this glazing and spot putty with a little razor blade and just took a little pea-sized droplet of it and smeared it over some of the imperfections on both the spoiler as well as the windshield visor, and sanded it down with some more 150 grit. And I think now we're at the point where I want to say there's one more level of sanding. Let me check the touch-up or automotive touch-up, which is actually cool. So I sprayed some of the base coat onto this card here, which you can see, and then I just compare that up against my paint to make sure it's actually going to match, which it does, at least so far. And then what we have here is like some basically sanding instructions. So optional final sanding before using the primer is actually 320 grit. So I'll break that out and sand both of these down to 320, and then figure out how I'm going to set them up to actually paint. I've got maybe a 2-hour window before the humidity gets too much again. But we'll see if we can get these things covered in primer today. This morning I went and snagged these little sawhorses, 25 bucks on Facebook Marketplace, which is the cost of just one of them if you were to buy them new. So I'm hoping that I can somehow set up the spoiler and the visor on these to get them painted. I'm just not sure exactly. I suppose I paint the undersides of both of them first, flip them over, and then paint the other side. I was also thinking about maybe hanging the trunk spoiler, just because it's got hardware and like holes in it that I could, hang it from maybe one of these beams and paint both sides kind of simultaneously. But I'm going to see what the setup might look like to get these done. We are at the point where I'm ready to start laying down some primer. I just wiped down both of these pieces with some acetone, and everything's looking pretty good. All the imperfections have been filled, at least for the most part. I may have to fill a couple more after I prime it and then do some wet sanding, see how it all looks. And next, go into our automotive touch-up little goodie pack here and grab a can of our primer. Shake it up. I'm going to shake it up for a good probably minute or two. And then it says to spray it basically like 6 to 9 inches from whatever you're painting, slightly overlapping, doing about at least 3 coats within about 10 to 15 minutes apart. And once this is all done, both sides have been primed. Basically, I'm gonna prime one side, prime the other piece, flip them over once they're dry, and prime the other side, and touch up as needed, but should be pretty straightforward. And this is Automotive Touch-Up Sandable Primer, and I will, of course, have a link down in the description to these guys if you want to make your painting life easier. Paint match. So, should be a breeze. Let's get to it. Finally, the stars have aligned and Mother Nature has decided to cooperate. It's been about a week that I've been waiting for humidity levels to drop below, ideally like below 65% right now, or today we're gonna be at about 60 to 55% for about a 3-hour window. And so today I'm gonna take the opportunity to lay down the Automotive Touch-Up base coat, which is our color. For my car, for the 91 Prelude, it is Honda, color code NH-538. It's a white. I forget what they call it, Arctic white, or don't quote me, but NH-538. But it should be on when you open your driver's side door, there should be a little sticker that you can confirm what your actual color is. And then you head over to automotivetouchup.com and you can put in your year, make, and model, and it should populate a list of colors that were available for that year for that car. And then you want to obviously make sure that it matches your door sticker, and then you should be good to go. So I've got 2 cans of base coat. They sent me 4. I'm gonna see if 2 should do the trick. Basically with these, it says to do 2 to 3 coats or until full coverage is achieved, letting about 5 to 10 minutes or longer in between coats. And then we got to wait 30 minutes or longer to be able to then put on our gloss clear coat. So really stoked about this automotive touch-up stuff. I love the fact that they give you the sandpaper, which is also able to do wet sanding. So that's what I did when the primer dried, is I wet sanded everything with 600 grit. And then that basically gets us ready to lay down our base coat. And then off camera, I just basically rinsed and used some dishwash soap, some like Dawn dish soap, to clean all of the parts. And then before we actually put the color on, I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with this paint prep surface wipe that Automotive Touch-Up includes. So solvent infused wipe, prep surface for flawless touch-up repair, removes surface oil, grease, wax, and improves adhesion. So that should be the last step. Right now I've just got, I'll show you, all the parts just out in the sun. I've used some sawhorses that I put some foam over, and I was kind of debating for a long time how I'm going to paint these. And so basically my plan is to flip both pieces over. The windshield visor I'm going to flip over so the underside is facing up top, and then the spoiler I'm going to do the same thing and put the bottom facing up top. That way, when I put the base coat, I'm starting on the side that is going to be less seen. And then once those dry for about 30 minutes, I'm going to flip them over and do the other side. And that way I'm painting the surface that is most often going to be seen when it's installed on the car. I'm painting that surface last. So that way, if there are imperfections that pop up in the process of flipping them over, I'm hoping that they will at least be on the underside and will be far less noticeable. Otherwise, I was thinking about like stringing the parts up from like the beams in the garage here, but still then you'd have like the string laying up against the part and it just wasn't going to work out. So I'm hoping this is going to do nicely. If I didn't already mention it, on the sawhorses, I picked up some like pipe insulation foam and I just laid that on top of the sawhorses where the parts actually sit on, just so that way it's a softer surface. And once again, trying to do my best to avoid any imperfections once we lay this color. I've been waiting like 2 weeks to paint this, just waiting on the weather, and I've been waiting months to install these parts. I've had them for a while, so that's it, folks. I'm gonna wait for those to dry, shake up these cans in the meantime, hit it with the surface wipe, and then we're spraying color, baby. I've let these two dry for about 30 minutes before I flip them, and did probably 4 to 5 coats just to make sure I have completely full coverage. The weather has started to pick up and get a little windy, so I've got like, I don't know, I think that's just, I can flake that off. That's not too bad, but I'm also wondering about the color match. It looks awfully gray for the color, and but you know what? I'm gonna roll with it and see how it comes out and put it next to the car and see how the color matches. And maybe once we put the clear coat on it, it will make things pop a lot more. So gonna go ahead and get these ready to flip, and assuming the weather cooperates, start painting the other side. Base coat is all done. Both sides have been painted. I had one spot that was literally the last spray or last coat, and I had just a little bit of section here to cover, but my other can of color was starting to run out, so I jumped over to the new can, sprayed maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, and on that 4th pass, a drop came off and landed right in the middle of the trunk spoiler on the top. So I ended up having to wait for this whole thing to dry for about 30 minutes or so. And then I came back with some 600 grit wet sandpaper and just lightly kind of peeled back that drip spot, and then hit just that spot, kind of like this area here, once more with a coat of color. And at this point, I think top and bottom are covered perfectly. So unfortunately, I've got about an hour before the humidity rises to a point where I shouldn't be painting anymore. And I feel like it's going to take me longer than that to do the clear coat. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to wait until tomorrow when I have another 3-hour window or so of low humidity and spray the clear coat. So I'm gonna let these dry overnight. Tomorrow, just give them a quick, I don't even know if I wanna use the same pad that I used before, or maybe just like a little bit of soapy water to get these, any dust that may have fallen down on them, get that cleaned up. And then probably do the same thing where I paint or clear coat the bottom sides first, and then flip them over and clear coat the top. And then it's about, like a 24-hour cure time before I can go back and wet sand with like 1000 and 1500 grit and really take any defects out of the clear coat away, and then polish it. I do also have to take some foam and recreate some gaskets on the underside of the spoiler, but then after that, it's throwing double-sided tape on the rear windshield visor, getting that installed, which should be honestly quite easy. And then doing the trunk spoiler install is going to be drilling out the holes in the trunk. There are like little factory markings that I'm hoping are going to line up perfectly because this is a factory spoiler. And yeah, that's it. Then we just install and hope for the best. But I have to unfortunately wait until tomorrow to pick this project back up, so I will see you guys 24 hours from now. Okay, my friends, we are on the home stretch of painting. The base coat has dried overnight, like I was saying, I think yesterday. I would have loved to spray the clear coat yesterday. However, I ran out of low humidity. As 5, 6 o'clock happens, the humidity just skyrockets back up to 90%. So right now we're sitting at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Humidity levels are currently at about 65% and dropping to low 60s, and it's about 86 degrees outside. So would love to have the humidity a little bit lower than that, but we are in the clear zone being below 70%. And I know this is like, for some of you might be totally just useless numbers, but for anybody that's trying to replicate this, it might be helpful. Obviously, it's going to very much depend on where you live. If you live in like higher altitude, you're going to have much lower humidity. So hold on. I didn't even realize it until later yesterday, but Automotive Touch-Up actually sent 2 of their prep pads or prep wipes. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did yesterday and kind of cut this one in 2. I'm going to wipe the surface. I'm doing, again, the same deal with the underside, and then I'm doing my 3 little caps. And then I'm going to do probably like 4 coats on each side, basically until I get full coverage. And this is, Automotive Touch-Up says this should dry 10 to 15 minutes, which is a bit more than what the base coat was. And now, traditionally, I thought with clear coat, you wanted to do a couple light layers and then start building up to a more wet layer. However, this says, it doesn't really say to do that. It just says, obviously, don't spray it too heavily because then it will drip and all that stuff. So my plan is to probably hit it with a couple light coats and then maybe start building up to be a little bit heavier as I reach the end of each side of clear coat, each side of the pieces here. So kind of the same thing as yesterday. We're just going to allow a little bit more time in between coats to let it dry. But again, also kind of goes against what I know is I thought you wanted to spray the clear, you wanted to do each coat before the last one dries completely, but I'm going to trust the process here, and we'll see how it goes. I did also take the visor out to the car just to look at the paint match, and I think it looks really good. So I think the clear coat is going to finish it off nicely, and without further ado, let's jump onto it and get the safety mask on and start spraying some clear. It is the next day. The clear coat has fully dried and cured, and looks pretty good. I'm hoping that it's kind of flat, so I'm hoping that after doing a little bit of wet sanding, it's going to kind of polish this up. And then obviously we got to hit it with some rubbing compound and an actual polish, and that should help a lot. I did have, I don't know if you can see it, yeah, one imperfection right there where a little bit of clear coat dripped off the can, so I'm gonna try my best to see if that will wet sand out. And other than that, I'm just gonna hopefully have these things installed today. This is the 3M tape I'm gonna use to try and adhere this thing to the roof, the windshield visor. So obviously I've got it pushed down all the way around, and I'm gonna take some masking tape and kind of just mock it up onto the top of the car, which I've already wiped down with rubbing alcohol to clean up, so that way the tape adheres nicely. And we're gonna give this a whirl. It's kind of trial and error. Let's see if it works. Here's how I'd like it to sit, is more kind of like this way, coming off the roof. So now I'm just trying to, I've basically wedged up some bubble wrap in here to hold it in place of where I want it to go. I'm just hoping that once I take the double-sided tape off, stick it down, and remove this, it doesn't just sag down. But we are going to find out. So right now I'm just trying to double check all of my angles and everything and making sure that everything looks good. Okay, so I like how this side sits. I think this side will actually match it nicely. All right, so now basically I need to pull off all the double-sided tape, which this might be a bit of a challenge. So I think what I'd like to do is maybe just one side at a time, although now this is gonna totally mess up where my angles are at, but I'm gonna try and just like pull a corner of the tape off on each piece, so that way I can more easily pull it away. And we'll get this back to where we had it. Which was gonna be kind of about here. Just put this tape back down. We'll do the other side. I'm also noticing now that the clear coat is not as polished as I would like it to be. And so, you know, over time I could buff it and, you know, try and polish it up a little bit, but I didn't want to go too nuts wet sanding, because I had actually tried using the palm sander in one spot, and it totally ate through the clear coat and the color a bit. So I had to respray some of it, which that's my own bad. But I had sat there for close to 2 hours just wet sanding with my hand and didn't seem to do the trick. So I figured maybe I'll continue wet sanding with a palm sander. Don't do that. That was not the move. So that's gonna sit somewhere like there, I think. And I guess with this, you know, double-sided tape, we can always redo it. I don't really have anything to like measure off of per se, although I can definitely tell this is a bit different. Reseat that. So just a lot of like trial, like I said, trial and error, trying to make sure everything sits the way I want it to. This side might be too high. Oh boy, it's already starting to stick. So, okay, I think without messing with it too much, I'm gonna put it down. So, grab this guy, pull that out. Grab this guy, pull that out, and try and seat that down pretty good. And then obviously I'm gonna be pressing off this quite a bit, especially after it sits out in the sun, to try and make sure everything sits the way I want it to and doesn't come flying off, because after all this work that would really blow. So we're gonna take this one off and this one off. And these are, you know, Honda never made this part for this car, so these are all, you know, handmade, and basically there's gonna be, it's not gonna be picture perfect, So trying to understand that as I'm doing this and kind of reduce my level of perfection. So let's see, now we're gonna grab this guy and start pulling this out. Down it goes. Okay, doesn't hurt to keep the masking tape on there. There we go. And I guess what I could do is keep like maybe a piece of foam, like actually attach it to the underside of this, so that way it rests on the windshield. But we'll see how this sits first before jumping to conclusions. Lift up our masking tape, pull the rest of this out like that, stick it down. Okay, pull the masking tape off and push away. I like to kind of wiggle parts on with double-sided tape. That way it really like hopefully adheres nicely to everything. Now, moment of truth. If we remove this, what happens? Hey, didn't move at all. Excellent. And so I feel like I've seen some people who install these, and I even made the mistake when I was first mocking it up, is like putting it too low, so that way this is actually like going this way instead of off the roof. And this angles down a little bit, but I think I've achieved much better fitment than what I've seen other people do. And I'm not bashing anybody. Maybe that's how they want it. You can mount it however you want, but I wanted mine to be a little bit more like that. And I think that looks pretty good. I gotta tidy up some of this tape that's smeared out here. But for the first time since owning a 3rd gen Prelude, I have a part on this car that I've been wanting for years. Literally since 2019. That's crazy. And here you have it. I'll show you what I'm talking about with this little bit of tape that's kind of smearing out. So I'll just take some alcohol and clean that up. But as far as the paint match goes, the color is perfect. I think the color is spot on. But I think you can, now that it's like up there, you can see how nice and polished this paint is versus this paint. So, I'm not a professional painter, but I did my very best. Spent literally weeks on this. So I'm just going to live with it for now. And I guess I could always take it off and repaint it, but this is how it looks. And right up front here, nice flush fitment. And then I'll show you what I mean. So like trying to like keep that curvature of the roof without it slanting down super far or super harshly. So very happy with that. Been wanting one of these forever. And next we gotta drill some holes in my factory trunk and install this trunk spoiler. Okay, so right now what I'm doing is recreating, if you remember, there was like some foam gasketing right here, and I need to kind of recreate that. And so what I did was lay down masking tape across this and then cut out the masking tape, lay it on some foam that I have. This is actually the same foam that I used for the taillight gaskets. I had a bunch left over, so I'm gonna make use of that. So I had my stencil, and then it's basically gonna go like that. I may have to like cut out a little bit to allow for this bevel here, or I may just send it, because honestly, more squish the better. And this foam is pretty thick, and I may have to actually use something else, but I had this laying around, so I wanted to give it a shot. Honestly, what I'm thinking at this point is get the holes drilled out, get this thing installed, and then I can always take it right back off later. Once everything's been installed, it's so much easier to reinstall it and replace this foam, which I'll already have cutouts. Just use thinner foam here. And then I could also like do some more wet sanding. I started wet sanding the other side and realized that if I really just spend a heck of a lot of time wet sanding, the polish does come out of the clear coat and looks a lot more OEM. So for now, I think the goal is to just get this thing installed, and then I will off camera not waste your guys' times with wet sanding. And then the process for this foam is going to be identical. So just wanted to show you guys that, and that's one. Okay, so here I'm just doing the other one, which you can see I've pressed down and kind of used my fingernail to outline the edges. And then I'm just going to go through and carefully trace it out with the knife. or the blade. Okay. Now it should just lift up like that. And now you can just use the corner of the blade to start lifting up on this. Carefully without ripping it. And then we've got our stencil for this one now. And it should be identical as the other one. The other one just has an extra stud going through it. Okay, and there you have it. All 4 new pieces of foam gasketing are installed, or, you know, mocked up at least, ready to be installed. And I don't think I can put this off any longer. I think it's time to drill holes in the trunk. So if you look on either side of the trunk, there's these actual like little marks. You see this little rounded edge, and then you can almost see where the bolt hole would be. That's the factory spots for the trunk spoiler. So what I'm going to do is drill one of these out, put the bolt through, get it seated onto the spoiler, and then probably do the other one on the other side, and then lift the trunk back, or lift the spoiler back off, and then drill the holes. Actually, basically what I'm trying to say here is once I get these 2 lined up correctly, I'm going to pull the spoiler off and add like a little bit of, you know, toothpaste or something basically on these studs. And then I'm going to rest it back down on these 2 holes that I've already drilled, put the bolts in, and then basically it will leave a mark of where I need to drill out for these holes. And then also I'll have to drill out a hole for the wiring to go down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes I have to drill in the trunk, which is quite nerve-wracking. Okay, well, here we go. I'm gonna do my best to kind of center this in what I would think would be the factory spot. So, oh boy, here we go. Okay, and there we go. First hole is drilled out. Holy crap, that's terrifying. Okay, so we've got our first hole right here. I'm gonna put some masking tape down. Probably just shut that right here. Hopefully to keep the paint from chipping. And then once I drill out the holes, I'm gonna take a little bit of paint on a paintbrush and just etch or cover them a little bit to obviously keep the exposed metal down and prevent rust. So now we just have to drill this out to be the next size up. Okay. And next size up. Now I can grab the OEM hardware for this thing and see if our hole is big enough, which it is not. We have to go up at least another, one more size, I would say, to be able to get that in there. All right, so the first 2 holes are gonna work, which very much a relief. I put some anti-seize, just a drop of it, on the other, basically the posts that need to get drilled out. And so if I take this back up, I keep getting not a very clean mark here. I'll try that once more. But I'm basically just trying to leave a mark right where I want to drill out for the other posts. Basically right there. Okay, I'm gonna take this back up, and now I've left little marks where I need to drill my other holes. All right, that was just absolutely terrifying. But now I have all, well, except for the hole that I'm gonna have to drill for the wiring harness. But we should hypothetically now have all of our holes drilled to at least mount it. So let's do that. Let's just see how this looks. Let's look very carefully. This is definitely not a one-man job. Okay, so maybe if I tighten some stuff down, this might be easier to do, but it looks like the holes are gonna line up. So let's pull this back off. Okay, all holes are drilled. I did drill out the hole for the wires. I cut off the stock connector because I'm not gonna be able to use that anyways, and I wouldn't have to drill out nearly as big of a hole for just 2 wires as I would for that giant connector. So I cut that off. Now I've wiped all this down with some rubbing alcohol, and I'm gonna basically take some of the base coat and spray it into the cap here, and then use this little brush to just paint the edges so that way they don't tend to rust over time. Shouldn't need a whole lot of paint. Yeah, we're just gonna kind of go around the edges here. I may do a couple coats of this just to be safe. And we'll let that dry, and I'll probably go back and do a second coat and then do the underside as well. After literally months of getting the parts and waiting until I had the time and the paint and everything, and then as well as years of wanting that rear windshield visor on my last Prelude, literally since like 2020, 2019, I've been wanting one of these, and they're just so hard to get. And so I finally found a guy who makes them out of fiberglass, and finally have one installed on my Prelude. And I'm just so excited because it's been like, gosh, 6 years in the making, or of wanting one. And just having a clean Prelude now, an SI, it has all the features like power windows, much nicer seats. It's just got all the things that my last Prelude didn't. And now it also has the rear windshield visor. And then I've also installed an OEM 3rd gen Prelude 1990 and 1991 version spoiler, and which is obviously appropriate because this is a 91. So basically the whole thing was installed as you guys saw. This is being held on by double-sided tape, and seems pretty good so far. I may go back and add a little more to these side pieces here just to keep them nice and snug. But other than that, I've already driven around and it's held up just fine. I washed the car, so water didn't, loosen it up or anything. The spoiler was pretty nerve-wracking to install, just drilling the holes, but using the factory holes first and then drilling the rest of them worked out really, really well. And I've got it all wired up. I'll show you that real quick. So there you have it, brake lights. We now have a working spoiler light, and this brake light, I haven't decided if I'm going to keep it, the factory 3rd one behind the rear windshield. My buddy said it best, the more light that people know you're stopping, probably the better. So, gosh, it just looks so good, and all of the LEDs are functioning just fine. None of them are out. It looks freaking amazing. And I just tapped it into the factory 3rd brake light wiring. So really simple, easy electrical install. Gosh, it looks so good. I love that it has like the rear bumper kind of comes out, and then you have the flat trunk, and then you have this layer to it, and then you also have the roof spoiler. And then inside, I may remove the tint probably after summer because I'm not a big fan of it. But then I have the C-pillar brace going across. So when you're behind the car, it just looks so cool. Like there's so many neat aspects to it now. And I absolutely love it. Off camera, I think I mentioned it before, but I still want to go back and do some more wet sanding on this. It's not, it looks good, but it's just not like a nice polished compared to, or a nice polish compared to the actual trunk and the rest of the car. So some wet sanding and some polish should hopefully do nicely on that. Overall, the paint match of the paint that these guys provided is spectacular. I still need to put in a little more work on wet sanding both the parts to get the polish to pop as much as the rest of the car, but the color match is so good. Like, it is perfect. And very impressed with their kit. So I'll have a link down in the description if you guys want to clean up some parts. If you have a visor or spoiler you want to paint match, whatever color code your car is, you just plug that in and figure out what tools you're going to need, or I should say how much paint you're going to need, and then go from there. But it's just absolutely stoked with how this came out. And the trunk lines up just perfectly like it was OEM from the factory. Get out of here, dude. What? And the visor looks really, really good. I'd still have to clean up this little bit of tape that's popping out. But overall, very happy with it. I think I may still end up putting like a piece of square foam under here just to kind of lift it up a little bit and keep it from sagging over time. It may not, but gosh, what a cool looking Prelude now. absolutely in love with it. I know this video took me ages to put out, and I just didn't want to cut corners with the process, and I wanted to do it right. So if you guys stuck around to the end of the video, I really appreciate it. I hope that this helps you out, because I know when I was looking online or YouTube for either a 3rd gen factory spoiler install or a visor install, they don't exist on the internet. So here is a hopefully helpful video for you guys that want to do the same thing, whether that's the trunk spoiler or the visor. I'm really happy and grateful that I have this car and I'm able to put this kind of stuff out for you guys, because I know there's a lot of you that are out there trying to build up your 3rd gens, and I understand how minimal the amount of content is out there supporting this chassis. So thank you guys so much for being here and watching. Let me know down in the comments where you're watching from. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep elevating, my friends. Love you. Adios.